care, lead, innovate, motivate, balance. These 5 tenets reveal ways of creating a more profitable and customer-centric pharmacy. What will you discover when you climb with RMS?
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Climb. I'm Brad Jones, the founder and CEO here at Retail Management Solutions, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to the September Climb event. Now, you'll notice a little bit of difference here. I'm the only one today. My sidekick, Brandon Bolesky, our Director of Operations, isn't with us today, and I'm going to actually go through and do Climb all by myself today. I'm your guest speaker. I'm going to do the AfterCLIMB. I'm the one today, and we did this actually by design because last month, we had Mona Gaddis from Durand Central Pharmacy here, and we spent about 45 minutes talking about her amazing independent pharmacy and the transformation she made over time and the impact that it had on our pharmacy. And then a few days later, I was in Texas doing a presentation for Lisa Faust's organization, Diversify RX, excuse me, at their Pharmacy Profit Summit. And it was a great experience. I spoke on stage to a group of hundreds of independent pharmacies that are really trying to make a difference in their front end and gave the presentation that I'm going to give today. And so, so we really thought this was a good tie-in. And then in my AfterCLIMB today, I'm actually going to do a little bit of a deep dive into some of the reports, or not some of the reports that I talk about during my presentation here today, as well as one additional report. So it's all me today. Sorry if I'm boring to you, but I'm excited to do this. So I'm going to share my screen right now and just get right into it. So just give me a second. Here we go. So I've entitled my presentation Fun with the Front End. And I did this because I really personally, I've been in Brown Pharmacy, as many of you know, my entire life. I really think that the front end of the pharmacy is a lot of fun. And so I wanted to build off of that. So why do I think it's fun? Well, I think it's fun. You get my mouse working. Here we go. I think it's fun because you have control. This is the place you have control. The front end of the business is where you have complete control. You control the products and services. You control the appearance. You control the merchandising, the pricing. You have complete control over the image. And I'm going to you have complete control over that image that you are projecting to your patients, to your customers. Okay? So many of you, even if you don't, even if you have a tiny front end, so many discount the importance of that front end. And it's imperative that you stop discounting that, because even if you're an apothecary with 100 SKUs, the moment somebody sees your pharmacy from the outside, the moment they walk in the door, you're projecting an image with what things look like in front of the pharmacy counter. Don't discount the importance of that. It's the image that you're creating right now at the front end of your business. And we're going to be talking about that a little bit more detail here in just a second. So we're going to talk, I'm going to start with neuroscience in your pharmacy. Now, neuroscience, we're just going to do a very tight definition of it for the purposes of looking at your pharmacy and retail. So neuroscience is really the study of what drives people to do things, okay? And then with respect to your pharmacy, respect to retail, studies show that people are not rational shoppers. Now, we've heard this before, probably some of you heard this before, but people are not rational shoppers. And think about that. How many of you go to Costco with a list, and when you leave Costco, there's a bunch of things that you've purchased that aren't on the list? They are one of the best in the world at doing this. One of the ways they do it is that they provide you samples, right? And suddenly you taste something and you go, I got to have that. And we're not rational shoppers. Okay, we're impulse shoppers. That's why you'll see in retail all the time, there's impulse buys at the register. If you're not using that, you should be using that. So keep in mind, people are not rational shoppers. And it turns out that neuroscience studies show that shoppers are unconsciously attracted by pleasure and a feeling of reward. And in fact, unconscious thought drives up to 80% of consumer purchase behavior. Think about that. Up to 80% of purchase behavior is driven by subconscious thought. Now, that's imperative that you understand when you're thinking about the image you're trying to portray in your pharmacy. This knowledge, this little tiny bit of knowledge can drive so much more business to your pharmacy if you take advantage of knowing this information. 80%, 80%, think about that, of your patient's purchase behavior is driven by unconscious thought. So how does that impact things? What should we do with this knowledge? Well, this one slide only has this one piece. Visual merchandising in your pharmacy, or visual merchandising. Visual merchandising helps create the value, customer value, by making the shopper journey efficient, unique, and memorable. So keeping this thought in mind that 80% of consumer purchase behavior is driven by subconscious thought. Visualizing things is what's going on. People are visualizing your pharmacy, and is it creating one that's efficient? Because people get impatient. So what you're doing efficient, does it create a unique and memorable experience? Think about your pharmacy right now. Is there anything that you're doing when they see your pharmacy that is unique and memorable? Because that's what not only gets them in the door, but keeps people coming back. So think about this. What's your store's appearance? Now, if I had asked that question first, what's my store's appearance? Most of you would be driven right to the entry into the middle of your pharmacy, inside the building. But honestly, your store's appearance starts with the exterior of the building. Now, for those of you that have a parking lot, it starts in the parking lot and the exterior of the building. Some of you don't have the parking lot, right? You're on a sidewalk and it still starts with the exterior of the building. How many people are driving by your pharmacy every single day and not stopping and have never stopped? Now, why is that? Is it that the exterior of the building and the parking lot are filthy and it looks run down and and the thought that people notice it and go, I will never step foot in that dump? Or is it that just as bad, because they're not coming in your pharmacy, it looks nice, it looks clean, but it doesn't say anything. It doesn't create any kind of feeling that I want to check that place out. Think about businesses you drive by that have caught your attention and you go, wow, I've got to check that store out. I've got to go in there. Does your store do that? So it starts the exterior of the building, not just the interior. Now, if you can get them to stop, then what does the entryway look like? What's the flooring like? What are the fixtures like? What's the layout? How are things merchandised? What's the lighting like? Is it dim and dreary? Is it bright and inviting? What's the signage like? Here's an interesting story about signage, or study about signage. We've all heard that picture's worth 1,000 words. With signage, it turns out that pictures do a better job than text. But if you're going to have a picture, and it's best to have a picture on the left and text on the right. That actually does better than simply a picture, and a lot better than simply text. But here's an interesting thing. If you put the text on the left and the picture on the right, it's almost as bad as just having text. We read from left to right. If we see a picture, we're more engaged and we'll tend to read the text that goes with the picture. But if we put the text on the left and the picture on the right, we see the text first, it's just like text and we don't even look at the picture. It's crazy stuff. That's what neuroscience teaches us, but it's a fascinating thing. And if you're doing signage, it's something important to keep in mind, and you should be doing signage. Cleanliness. Are my floors clean? Is my entryway clean, inviting? Are my fixtures clean? Do I have dust everywhere? Looks like I'm going out of business. Do I have bare shelves? It looks like I'm going out of business. Am I completely cluttered, which looks like I'm totally disorganized? Think about this. You're a pharmacy that says my front end isn't important to me because, I carry, just a small smattering of some OTC items for convenience, but I'm really making my money in vaccination. I'm doing all these other things. And now the person walks in and your store's filthy. Does that make somebody feel comfortable about getting vaccinated, having a needle put in their arm? Probably not. So that image is important regardless of what you're selling. We're going to come back and talk a lot more about that stuff in here in a moment, but think about that. Now, need of a remodel. You go, I just can't afford to do a remodel. Well, you don't have to do everything at once. And that's one of the important things here. You can, and I'm not asking you to do everything at once, make small incremental changes, measure those changes and see if they're having an impact. We're going to look at some pictures here in a little bit, or here in a moment, of a couple of different pharmacies that I think are just exceptional, and they're doing exceptional business. And the first one is from our guest speaker last month, Mona Gaddis at Durand Central Pharmacy. And in these pictures, one of the things, or when you go into her store, one of the things you'll notice is that she's done away with the aisles. And in her presentation in the interview last month, we talked about that, and it was a transformation. It didn't happen overnight. They didn't just go in one day, tear out all the aisles, and come in and create a boutique pharmacy overnight. It's piecemeals, just small changes at a time, and measuring those changes. So here you can just see some of the display techniques. And one of the things that we find with neuroscience, and you'll see this in the next one as well, is that people, when you display on wood shelves, wood cabinets, wood floors, and you'll see some wood flooring and some really amazing uses of lighting in the next slides, people attach value to that. They believe the product is of higher quality, and as a result, that that they should pay more money for it, and they do. So it's pretty fascinating stuff when you start understanding the neuroscience behind people's purchasing decisions that are completely irrational. One slide here that I want to point out too is Durand Central really focuses on drug-induced nutrient depletion as one of their clinical service areas. And so they have a high-end high-end vitamins and supplements right there at the pickup lane. And so they're talking about it, and it's right there in front of people so they can see it, they can see the prices, they can see the quality of product, and that has helped drive sales as well. Now, this is Valley Integrated Pharmacy. You can see here, they do have, in the middle slide, they do have some aisles left in the pharmacy, more your traditional products here. And then over in this slide, I love this slide because you have this beautiful wood floor. Down here, you have really nice looking carpeting squares. But so you can change the flooring in the store to accent what you're doing in the store. Wood shelving with nice lighting, tables, really beautiful display. Look at the really cool lighting. You've got lighting up in the ceilings, spotlights, amazing use of lighting. Over here, lighting up the prescription department. Over here, another just example of ways to display in a boutique fashion that give people a feeling, an ambiance. You're really creating an ambiance. And I know you go, wait a minute, what are we talking about ambiance in my pharmacy? That's why I think about ambiance when I'm in a restaurant, but not in my pharmacy. But you need to be thinking about ambiance in your pharmacy because it's those subconscious feelings people have that are going to keep them coming back to your pharmacy. And that's my next slide. What's my store's ambiance? So is it warm and welcoming or cold and chaotic? We know We all know, being in this industry, that it gets chaotic behind the counter in the prescription department, right? We know that. The question is whether your patients and your customers know that, whether they feel that. They can't feel that. You can't let them feel that. You can't let them feel this is a cold and chaotic place. You want to create a warm and welcoming environment from the moment they see the outside of the store, through the door, and certainly when they're in the store interacting. And so think about this, you're trying to create this image. You're trying to create a warm and welcoming image. You're trying to create a professional image, I'm hoping. What is the appearance of your team? Does your team have some kind of a uniform, maybe a shirt with a logo, the store's logo, and then a name tag? You should be having a name tag. If you don't have a name tag, that's how expensive is that? Change that now. If you don't have a logoed shirt, or at least, even if it's not a logoed shirt, some form of a requirement for appearance, you need to be doing those things. So what's the appearance of your team? In the prescription department, are you trying to be clinical? Are you trying to create a professional image? Then white coats, probably a must. Once again, name tags. So what's the appearance of your team today? Easy fix if you're not doing these things. What are the consumer interactions like? On the sales floor, at the register, on the phone? Well, what is that like? Uh, if if they walk up and it's a grumpy person asking to help them because it's so chaotic in the pharmacy, you can't have that. You just simply can't have it. It hurts your image. There's a good chance that person doesn't come back. They tell other people. Those are the things you don't want to have. And how do you ensure that you're portraying the things you want, the image you want? It's through training. So if you're not doing store meetings, you should be doing store meetings. You should be doing store meetings at least once a month. If you aren't doing training on this stuff, you can't assume people know how to do this. I tell a story, I'm not going to go into the details, but one of my top people here at RMS started as an intern and got the job because when I was go through the checkout line at the grocery store where he was bagging groceries, he looked me in the eye and smiled and said, "Have a nice day." That's important, and it doesn't come to everybody. Okay, it's not natural for everybody. How do you teach that? Well, you have to be having store meetings where you are teaching that. You go to YouTube and find all kinds of training videos that you can share during store meetings on customer service, and you should be doing those things. That's really important. How are you teaching your employees to respond to people saying thank you? Do they say no problem? Hate no problem. First of all, no problem uses the word problem. It's a negative connotation. It wasn't professional. I don't even remember when no problem started. We all do it from time to time. The right answer, though, you're welcome. That's warm and welcoming. No problem, cold and chaotic. Teach your staff to go with you're welcome, and you'll see a difference. Okay, store meetings, we have to do it. You have to create an ambiance. It's all part of your image. These are all important things that back to neuroscience. Back to neuroscience here. We know that up to 80% of people's purchasing decisions are based on subconscious thought. Okay, so create that store image, and ambiance is part of that. Now, marketing and advertising, I'm only going to talk, this is brief. This is not a presentation about marketing and advertising. This is a presentation about, obviously a presentation about creating, this environment that you can thrive, that causes people to feel positive and want to come back. So here's the important piece. It's not the media. It's the message that creates a successful marketing campaign. It's the message. What's your message? And that message, here's the media, print, TV, radio, social, website, whatever. That's your media, but it's not about that. Okay. Some of that media works well in your location, some of that media doesn't work at all in your location. I'm not telling you which ones because I don't know. You have to figure that part out, but that's not what's important anyway. It's the message that you're portraying in that media, in that campaign. And that message has to tie directly to the image you're trying to portray and the image you are portraying. It's not even what you're trying to portray because you are portraying an image. It may be not the image you want and you need to make changes to portray that image, but that is the reality. You are portraying an image. So you need your messaging, the image that you want. All of these things have to sync. It's all about that messaging. That's all I'm going to talk about with marketing and advertising. You need to be doing it, but that's a whole different presentation for another day. Okay, so we're now to this place that I call by the numbers, because I've just given you, in a very, very quickly, giving you a bunch of ideas on things that you need to be focusing on, places you can change, making your incremental changes. And then the question is, how do I know? How do I measure these things? Well, I can tell you this, that, Mona, I can tell you this because Mona told us all of this last time. And if you didn't see that presentation, you should go back and watch that presentation. But Mona Gaddis from Grand Central told us last time that, she made all of her changes were incremental. But one of the things that changed, not only did her front end business improve, but guess what? The pharmacy business improved too. So you can measure those numbers in your pharmacy management system. You can see that your average script volume goes up, the number of new patients goes up, the number of patients in general goes up. All of those things you can manage and look at in your pharmacy management system. The numbers I'm going to talk about right now come from your point of sale system. And these are numbers that will help you understand if the incremental changes that you're making with your merchandising, your cleanliness, your organization, all of these changes that you're going to make, hopefully, or at least some that you're going to make, will have an impact. And some of you don't even need to make any changes. You just need to keep on doing what you're doing, which includes changing on a regular basis, what you're carrying and so forth. But this helps you understand whether those changes are actually working. Now, before we get into the numbers, I have just a couple of brief comments. First of all, if you're relying on your drug wholesaler to manage your front end for you and give you all the information you need to do a good job with your pharmacy, you're probably not getting the best advice. One of the reasons is because, of course, they're driven to get you to sell their products and services. That's how they make money. When you look at the numbers, so they're going to give you a planogram for your front end, right? They're going to give you a bunch of planograms. They're going to give you your pricing strategy, going to be all those things. Fine. That's a nice starting point. But then your POS has got to tell you whether those things are actually working for you. So you may get a planogram that has a bunch of products that don't sell. And then at that point, you've got to remove those products and be able to, when they say, why are you doing this? Well, you need that. You need to be able to say, no, it doesn't work in my environment. There is no one size fits all. There is no such thing. Let me ask you this question. Who's your biggest competitor? In your locality, who is your biggest competitor? Now, every once in a while, a pharmacy owner tells me it's their grocery store. I would argue the majority of times it's your grocery store, at least for front end, okay? And I should caveat that for the front end of your business. And why do I say that? Well, because everybody has to shop for groceries regularly. The average shopper goes to a grocery store at least once a week. People like me, I'm not on any meds. When I go to the grocery store, I pick up my shampoo or my toothpaste, or I'm getting it at Costco. But I'm getting it at the grocery store frequently because I run out and it's convenient. And I don't have any reason to go to the local pharmacy because I'm not getting meds. Make your pharmacy a destination, but also recognize that, and it may not be, there may be somebody else that's right next to you that is even more of a competitor. Maybe it is Costco. Maybe it is one of the chains. But likely the grocery store, because of its convenience factor, is one of your biggest competitors. So create an environment where first you need to recognize, who is my biggest competitor, and that's going to impact all kinds of things. It's going to impact what you carry. It's going to impact what you price. If price was the only factor, in people's buying decision, then convenience stores wouldn't exist, would they? Because we all know convenience stores usually on everyday item, everyday price is more expensive than most other retail segments. So if price is the only factor, convenience stores wouldn't exist. So is your pharmacy a convenience store for Tylenol? If it is, charge convenience store prices for Tylenol. Make that extra money. Not all of you are in that situation. So that's why I'm talking about this. Use the numbers from your POS to help drive those kinds of decisions and recognize those types of situations. And then sell what sells. Don't worry about what your drug wholesaler is trying to tell you to sell. If OTCs and HBA items don't sell something else. Sell something that sells. Make that front end real estate valuable to you from a dollar perspective. So we've talked all about image. That's what I've been talking about for the last 20 or 30 minutes, all about image. Now we need to talk about the numbers. So let's get right into it. So first question, what's your best performing front end department? Think about that. What's your best performing front end department? Now, some of you right now are going, well, I don't know. And I'm, that's unfortunate, but it's the truth. Some of you don't know. And then there's a group of you who are saying, yeah, I know what it is. And we'll just pick one, OTC. And to you that think I have a second question. How are you defining performance? Because I didn't do that. I didn't ask you, what is your best performing department by sales, gross profit? Well, I didn't say. So how did you define that? Okay. Now, I know from experience, 24 years of owning this company and knowing the usage rates of different parts of our product, I know that the majority of you are defining it by gross margin. So I've taken this chart and I've sorted it by the highest gross margin. So this, by the way, is real data from one of our pharmacies that has 5 departments. And so we sorted this first chart by gross margin. And this is what the majority of you were thinking when probably, or sales potentially as well. But the information on this chart is what most of you have access to. If you're looking at this data, this is the access you have, and it's limited to this. Now, about 25% of you can go further. So OTC, keep in mind, was number 1. HBA, gifts, DME, and seasonal was last. Now, if you put yourself on inventory control, where you're doing perpetual inventory, and that is not as hard as it sounds, it's absolutely worth doing. I've done discussions on this and AfterCLIMB events on this, but so I won't go into too much detail. But it's worth doing, and here's why. If you do your inventory, then you get to add on this chart one more or 2 more columns, but one important piece of information turns. The next slide is even more important. But by having your inventory counts, you can see a lot more and more valuable information. So now I've resorted by my inventory turns. So seasonal, which was last, is now the best because I'm sorting it by inventory turns, followed by DME, followed by HBA, and then down here in 4th position, moving from number 1 to number 4, is OTC. Now, absolutely granted that OTC is still providing you the most dollars to the bottom line in profit. Not arguing that point. But what I will argue with you on is it could be you could be providing you much better performance if you managed it with the information that you have available. This just tells us how quickly we are turning our inventory every year. So we make seasonal, we are turning it, the cost of our inventory, we're turning it 6.4 times a year. Okay. The average chain is about 3.5 to 4, which is significantly lower than other retail segments, but the average pharmacy chain is right around there. So seasonal, DME, those are good. HVA is good. OTC, way below normal. Gifts, dismal. Overall store performance, not good. Okay. Now, that only gives you so much information. The next slide is where the real real amazing information comes. And that's when you add this final column, gross margin return on investment, or gross profit. Some say GP ROI. Gross profit return on investment, gross margin return on investment. Sometimes you'll see it like this, 4.49. Sometimes this would be displayed as 449%, depending on your system. This is actually one of the more common ways to do it. The chains sit at 2.7 or 207%, or 270% rather. That's their average. And again, that's low compared to other retail segments. If you were doing automotive, it's like 6.5, 6.5. Anyway, what's important for you to know is that this really gives you the most information. What does this mean? It means that for every dollar I invest in inventory, I'm getting $4.49 back. Okay. So that's important because this is, that's, if you were, when you're investing in the stock market, you're considering your return. Well, here it's giving you your return. So while yes, OTC is still giving me $30,000 to the bottom line every year, or this last year, it's only giving me $1.65 for every dollar I invest, whereas up here, I'm getting this much higher return on investment. So it tells me a couple of things. One, I might want to expand DME. I might want to expand HBA. I might want to expand seasonal. Doesn't mean I want to get rid of OTC. It means I want to get rid of the products that don't sell. Okay, and this is where this is why I'm talking about what your drug wholesaler is trying to get you to do. They're giving you a planogram, and loaded on your planogram, in most cases, is they're looking at national numbers, not your individual location. They're looking at national numbers. So in most cases, you're carrying things that don't sell in your area. And why don't they sell? Well, it could be, there's so many factors that impact that, but it simply could be that it's not competitive where you are, or just, people are buying it from Costco, or so many other things. But that's important for you to know. If it doesn't sell, look at it, go, is it not selling because my price is too high? Is it not selling? And then you do a little research. But if it's not selling, stop selling it. Get it out of your store. So what this pharmacy did is they started making changes. They looked at this data and they said, okay, I've got too much dead inventory in my OTC and my gifts department. They in fact had a huge, they're in a location that is has summer tourism. They went in with their seasonal, or their gifts rather, and they had a huge sidewalk sale and dumped, not at below cost, they dumped a lot of this product, and then they changed what they were doing with their gift department, and they changed the way they buy with gifts, and they were able to get this number up to a reasonable 3.5%. Okay, OTC, same thing. They stopped carrying the products that weren't selling. Mona at Gaddis, when she taught last month, she said, there's so little OTC that I carry today that's even major. She said, I only carry, I think she said 2 shampoos, neither of which are major. They're an organic shampoo that she found that people love, and they pay a lot higher price than they would for some of the national brand shampoos, and they sell a lot more of it. So, be creative, look at what sells, and then look at what it is you're trying to accomplish in your pharmacy, because once again, there's no one size fits all. There's a little bit of work involved. Okay. I don't have a new slide for this particular pharmacy, but I can tell you through those incremental changes that they made, and then looking at their continued reporting, the pharmacy total went from the 1.47 up to 3.75. And it's all through making these incremental changes and then looking at the results. So um, that is really the end of this part of the presentation. Now, this presentation was also part of a CE that I did for America's Pharmacist magazine back in October of last year, in 2021, October 2021. Here is, if you go to our website, rm-solutions.com/rms-library, it's the very first article. And you don't have to do the CE credit. You can just, you can read the article. But if you want to do the CE credit, you can do that on NCPA's website and go to their CE credit section, and you'll find that article there to do the CE credit. And that's really it for my presentation. I want to thank all of you for joining us for CLIMB today. I know this is a little bit shorter, but I think it really tied in to what we've been talking about for the last couple of months. I'm going to take a quick break. So those of you that are customers, well, even if you're not a customer, you're welcome to sit through AfterCLIMB, which I'm going to start here in just a second. AfterCLIMB is I'm going to do a look at those reports that you just saw, how they're presented on our system. And then I'm going to also look at an items with no sales report, just as a refresher. Some of you know these things, but just as a refresher on how to run these reports, what I consider the best practice on using these reports. So I will be right back with that. Once again, thank you all for joining us for CLIMB. Please share with everybody in the industry, share with your friends, share with your colleagues, and please continue to join us for CLIMB. Thanks again and have a terrific day. Welcome back and welcome to AfterCLIMB. And as I mentioned in our presentation today, I'm going to be talking about the return on investment report, which ties directly. These are the reports you just saw if you were watching the CLIMB September 2022 CLIMB webinar series. This is the report that I was showing in that presentation. So it's going to look a little different here because it's the actual output. But I'm going to talk about that report, and then I'm going to move on and show you a different report, items with no sales report. So let's just get started. So the return on investment report, this is the most important report in our system. This is the report that's going to tell you for every dollar you invested in inventory, this is how many dollars I'm getting back. So the way that I teach people to run this report, the best practice here, by the way, you can't run this report if you don't have your on-hand quantities in the system and you're not doing perpetual inventory. So you need to be doing both. Just putting them in and then only doing them once a year is still going to be kind of garbage in, garbage out. If you don't keep those inventories up to date, then you're really just not going to get the value of this tool, and it's an incredible tool. So let's just get started. So here's the best practice. I always tell people start with the department, start with the departments, and don't go detailed. Just start with your departments. So I always skip the inactive items and the items and phasing out. These are items I'm not going to have anymore. So I'm going to do selected departments. You would do all of your departments. I'm going to do selected departments because I do want, I just have, this is just my demo system. It doesn't have very good data, but it does have some that I can, use in this example. So I'm going to go select it and just pick a couple of departments. And I'm going to compare August of last year through July of this year. And then to August of the year before through July of the year before. And so we can have this comparison. I'm going to click next. And as I said, I'm going to do I'm just going to do a couple of departments here that I want to pick from, just because these are the ones that I actually have some data on. And let me get, I was going to do 90, and I was going to do 60, and let's do 56. This is just some data just to give you an idea. So we're going to do this. I'm going to preview it. Just take a couple of moments for it to populate. Now, while it's doing this, the idea here is to look at your departments. Then we're going to go back. We're going to drill down. We're going to look at one of the departments, but we're only going to look at we're going to look at all the fine lines in that department. And see if there's any fine lines that are doing well and any fine lines that are doing poorly. Then we're going to drill down into one of the fine lines and look at the actual details of the items within that fine line and what's going on there. So it'll just be another moment here. In your store, this will take 5-10 minutes to run. So it's one of those things that you get it running and then you walk away and come back to it. Okay, so I'm going to make this a little bigger for you. Okay, so we're looking at this report. We've got food and beverage, household products, home healthcare, OTC, and HBA. Now, in the presentation, if you watch the previous presentation, I mentioned there's two ways to display the numbers: as a percentage or not, or as real dollars. So in the case of this, our system displays this as a percentage. If you wanted to do this as real dollars, just move the decimal point over 2. So in other words, in this case, my food and beverage is giving me a gross percent return on investment of $21.02 for every dollar I invest. The household products, $2.60 for every dollar I invest. For home health care, it's 70 cents for every dollar I invest. And then for OTC, it's $5.28 for every dollar I invest. And for HBA, it's 12.6 cents for every dollar that I invest, which obviously isn't accurate, but this is just demo data. It's not, not good data. But that's how you would read this. Or you're getting, 2,101.9% return on your investment. So that's, I personally, I would change this. We're talking about changing this to be so you can really see it's $21 for every dollar I invest. Okay, that's astronomically high. Probably says there's something wrong with the data as well. Remember the chain pharmacy, their gross profit return on investment is 270% or $2.7 for every dollar they invest. Okay, so anyway, you see, we can look at this from the department and go, wow, this is doing great. But it also might be alarmingly high, and you have to look at it and go, what's wrong with my inventory? And it says right now that my value of my inventory is $2.44. This would be that. So here's a difference too, just to point this out. Cost of inventory. This is the cost of your inventory right this moment in time. This is what your system says is on hand right now. This is the average inventory value over the last year. Okay. The reason this is off is I think I have one item that's food and beverage out of all the items in my file. So this isn't a realistic thing. But if you saw that my current value is negative, then obviously your inventory is wrong. And if it's really low like this, and you go, I have 500 food and beverage items. So if I see $2.44 as my average inventory value for 500 items, we know that's wrong too. This one's maybe more realistic. All of these are unrealistically low for your average inventory value. But again, we're just doing this to show you how to run the report. Okay, so let's say I say, okay, I want to see this OTC. I want to drill down and find out, why or this is really good. Why, let's just look at it. You would normally, if it was really good, you might not look at it. You might go and look at home healthcare or HBA. I know that I just don't have much in the way of products in that. So, but I am going to look at this. So now we can go back and say, I want to look at department N01. So we can just close out of this. And now, instead of being by department, we say find line, and we're going to say selected find line. Everything else remains the same. And now I can go down to my find lines and do my N01 find lines, remembering that my find lines and departments are related. So my N01 department is going to have all N01 find lines, and so I've got all 5 of my find lines. And now I'm going to preview the same information, but looking at this one department and the find lines to see which find lines are performing better than other find lines and if there's any underperforming find lines. This one will take a little bit less time, so we'll have some good information here in a sec. Again, I'll make this bigger. So, okay. So now if we look at this, we go, okay, cough and cold looks good. That's 516% or $5.16 for every dollar I invest. Pain relief and antacids are $1.48 and $1.45 for every dollar I invest. Remembering that the base at the chain level is $2.70 or $2.70. So these are underperforming. And then vitamins and supplements is negative. Well, if it's negative, that's because there's a negative inventory, which means what? Your inventory is wrong. Your inventory is completely wrong. So, so this is skewing my numbers, but I have a problem here and I have to go and do inventory on vitamins and supplements. Now, what could that mean? It could mean that you have one item, only one item. Everything is if you go and you say to yourself, oh no, that can't be right. I mean, I'm doing vitamin supplement inventory all the time. Something's wrong here. Well, it's likely that you have one particular or a couple of items that are in your system totally inaccurate, that have some huge negative value that's driving everything else down. And so that brings us to the next page of information that we want to look at. I'm going to go ahead and just drill down on one find line. So I'm going to choose this particular find line, N0120. So we're going to go back out. And this time we're going to select a find line, but we're going to add details. So I go down to N0120, click next, hit preview. Okay, so now we can look at this and we can say, okay, overall 148% or $1.48 per, and we can start looking at what performs and what doesn't perform. So all of these items, they don't have any inventory value, and I actually could have had them segmented out of this as well. But down here, this is where we want to start looking. So this is doing really well. This says there's a problem. You've got a negative inventory. This one's not too bad, 2.3, 2.7 being the average. This one's doing really well. Is that accurate? Well, hopefully. The average inventory is $2.26. So, if this is accurate, great. But you can see these other numbers. So you can see, what the sales dollars are, what the profit is, the margin, and you can do these comparisons as well. I'm not as focused on the comparison here. You definitely want to look at the comparison, but really the bottom line is you want to look at these numbers. Now, why are my numbers all messed up? Because again, this is a demo. I don't do regular inventory and so forth, but this is how you can look at this report. If these are real numbers, let's say these are real numbers, okay? If these are real numbers, then these are items you most likely do not want to keep in your store. Look at these turns are horrific, so you're either way overstocked, or they're just not something that you sell. And if you're way overstocked, one of the things that you don't want is, if you just have one, if you can only sell and turn one, like, uh, it really has an impact on how your shelves look. Your shelves can start to look bare if you're just carrying one of everything, um, especially on these big metal shelves. Now, one of the things that Mona Gaddis at Durand Central said in her presentation last month that I loved was she changed out all of her metal shelving for some real narrow wood shelving where she does sell OTC HBA items, because that's thin wood shelving, when you only put one or two on, it doesn't look bare because it's not deep. And so that's something to think about as well. That's the importance where merchandising can come in. But the idea here is that you drill down to the problem. You look at your departments. Okay, I see this department has problems. I then drill down to the fine line level for all of the fine lines in that department. This fine line's great. This fine line's great. This fine line's where there's a problem here. And now you start drilling down to the individual items within that fine line. You're probably going to yourself and saying, oh my gosh, this is a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of time. That's true if you try to do the entire store all at one time. That's not how you do this. Okay, you make incremental changes and then you review those incremental changes. So you pick a department and you say, I'm going to do a full evaluation of this department over the course of the next month. And you look at that department or whatever that time frame is, and then you look at the department and you say, okay, there's 10 fine lines in this department, 5 of them are performing great and 5 of them aren't. And then you pick one fine line and you go down, or one fine line out of those 5, and you drill down further. That's the way to go about this, and you just do it over time. Nothing in your POS requires that you do it all in the same day. There's a lot of different ways to go about it. No one size fits all, but I will tell you this. Don't let yourself get overwhelmed and caught up into, oh my God, this is just too big of a project. Just do one at a time, and as much time as it takes, that's how much time it takes, and then you move on to the next one. Incremental changes will make all the difference in the world, and it just takes time. You can't do it all at once. Okay, so that is how you use this reporting tool. Now I'm going to take and help you speed one thing up, and this is getting items out of your store that do not sell. So this was the return on investment report. It's under product reports. If you come over to product reports, it's under product reports and under the financial section. Okay. Now we're going to go over to the product section, product reports, and we're going to run the items with no sales report. Okay, so the items with no sales report will let you choose no sales since whatever time frame you want. Okay, we're just going to go with 6 months ago. We're just going to report only. You can have it set items to phase out. You can have it set items to inactive, or you can have it delete items with no sales. I don't recommend ever doing the delete with no sales. I shouldn't say ever. If you've been around for, if you've been using our system for 20 years, then yes, you might want to set this report up where it's going to delete some really old items. Anyway, we always want to start here, report only. Now, I only want to show items that were, and here's something for you to know about the system. What's created versus activated. Okay, so the date created is exactly that, the date that it was created in your system. If, for those of you who may or may not remember, we will take a pride file and load it through universal import, and that's the day it gets created. Now, we'll set all, when we do that load, we set them all to inactive. So that what the value of that is, you have this catalog of product you can get from this vendor. And then when you sell that product, or you order that product, or receive that product, or you count that product, we activate the item. So let's say that you had an item that was created 3 years ago, but you've never carried it. And last month you started carrying it. So in fact, 2 weeks ago, you started carrying it. So if you use date created, it would look at the date it was created, not the date it was activated. Well, it's created 3 years ago. So you don't really want to look at the date created here. Most cases, there are times you do, but most cases you don't. You want to look at the date activated. And then you can say, I don't want to look at anything that was activated that hasn't sold. I don't want to look at anything for the last 90 days. So if I've activated in the last 90 days, I would expect it to have sold. But if I haven't, then I don't. And I'm only, and you could make this the same as that. You could say, I'm just going to do it for 6 months. So I could say 180 days because you're looking back at 180 days. So anything that's within the last 180 days, that hasn't sold in the last 180 days and hasn't been activated in the last 180 days, I only want to see those items. These other two, I personally wouldn't do them. Maybe load items into a promo event if you really drill down into a specific area. But the bottom line is, what we're looking for here, what isn't selling? And we're going to go ahead and I'm going to do vendor find line. Now, I like to do this in conjunction with that other report. So I've already looked at, and I know that I was looking at find line N0120. So I'm going to actually look at that. I'm going to skip inactive items, and I'm going to do a selected find line. And I use regular costs because if you're using average cost and the item's not in inventory currently, then it's going to be 0. I like to know what the regular cost is, but that's just me. You can go either way. Okay, so I said I wanted to do it in conjunction with that, so I'm going to do the pain relief, and these are the items. I'm looking for the items that just aren't that have no sales in the last 6 months. Okay, so here's my page of items with no sales in the last 6 months. Here's all that on hand. So I have $1,568 in just this one find line that is tied up, cash tied up. I paid for it. It's not sold anything. Here it says your date that it was created and your date last sold, okay, and the date last received. So it gives you a lot of information. Now, if you were looking at something seasonal like cough and cold, you might want to expand, right? You might want to say, I'm going to look at the last year as opposed to the last 6 months. Really, again, one of those things, no one size fits all solution. Just know how to use it and then think about what it is you're looking at. So, what do we want to do here? Again, these are all fictitious. These are all numbers that I throw into my system for testing and so forth. So, hopefully you really don't have 21 of this item. Hopefully you never put yourself in that situation unless some kind of a special buy, which is really failing dramatically. But that's what you do. So then next thing you do is, what do I want to do here? Well, this is coming from one of the wholesalers, and maybe I can return this. If there's enough dating on it, I can return these items for credit or partial credit. Maybe it's, I do some kind of a special promotion on Tylenol products. But bottom line, you got to get it out of the store. And you may say, I'm most likely in this case, I'm not going to carry this any longer. So anyway, that's it. These are the two most, I think the two most important reports, using them in conjunction with each other. So when you see this underperforming fine line, then go find out from this report what you have that doesn't sell. And that's all I have. I hope this is helpful as always, and thanks for joining me for AfterCLIMB. Bye everyone.